Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this month's Book and Tonic banter panel, Killer Twists. So we have three brilliant best-selling thriller writers on the panel this evening. You're in for an absolute treat. All of these authors write gripping psychological thrillers that explore the dark side of relationships in very atmospheric settings. Firstly, we have Nina Manning. Nina is the author of 4 psychological thrillers, including The Daughter-in-Law. Her newest release is The Bridesmaid, which we'll be talking about this evening, and that came out in May. Secondly, we have Mary Grand. Mary writes gripping thrillers set on the Isle of Wight. Her latest thriller is called The Island, and that came out last month. And finally, Linda Stacey is the author of many novels, including No Place Like Home, which came out earlier this month, and she'll be talking about that this evening. So please, as always, ask lots of questions. Don't be shy. Just put things in the comments below, and our authors will be so pleased to take your questions. And also, as always, we have a competition running this evening. So if you leave a comment and ask a question, you could be in with the chance of winning a copy of each of the authors' new releases. So please ask lots of questions, don't be shy, and join me in welcoming our brilliant authors. Hello, ladies. How are you?
Hi.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to leave you to it, but I'm really looking forward to this, and see you later.
Yay.
Bye.
Bye, Nia. Thank you. Hello, girls.
Hiya.
So I thought what might be a good idea with this being all about killer twists and plot twists is that if we just kind of discussed what a plot twist is to you. I mean, to lots of people, it's different things. But I was having a little bit of a think about it earlier. For me, I kind of use the unreliable narrator element quite often in my book, and I think that gets quite used. That is used quite a lot in psychological thrillers, a lot. And yeah, so what kind of thing do you girls think that is a killer twist, makes a killer twist or a killer plot?
Well, I think it's something that has to be like sort of a radical revelation or event that makes the readers go, what? Yeah. But at the same time, I think they should say, what? I didn't see that coming, and then say, oh, I should have seen that coming. Because I think the thing with twists is that they should be an integral part of the story and they should make sense. So although and that's why they take a bit of planning and a bit of thinking about, and because they have to have been sort of seeped through the story, I think. And then you suddenly bring this on and people go, but then they have to think, oh, rats, that's why I had that clue was there and that clue was there. And that to me is a twist, really. It's a completely unexpected direction for the story, but at the same time, it makes sense, I think.
Yeah. How about you, Linda?
I think I tend to work with unreliable narrators too, but I also like to throw a few characters in there that the reader isn't suspecting. I want them to develop through the story, and for the reader to be very cautious of that character sometimes. I mean, I've got 6 books out now, and some are very unreliable where you wouldn't expect it at all. But on others, you actually know who the villain is and you're waiting for his next move or her next move. And the twist tends to come when the reader realizes just how horrible that person really is. Because even though they know they're a little bit evil, they probably don't realize quite how evil.
So it's all about some sort of misdirection, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is what sells the books and what people enjoy, don't they? They like being misled, don't they? It's a strange concept, isn't it? But it's not for everybody. I know some people can't stand thrillers. I've spoken to lots of authors and lots of readers, and they get so frustrated. They're like, I just want to know, and even the people who do enjoy them, they're like, I just want to know. So that's what gets them to the end of the book. That's what keeps them reading, isn't it? They just want to know.
Comments are those where people say, I just couldn't put it down. I just had to read to the end. Even though I could sort of work out what was going to happen once I got near the end, I just couldn't stop. So they're the best comments that come, and we get near those. It's great.
Yeah. So do you want to just talk about your latest novel that you've got out at the moment, Mary?
Oh, yes. Now everybody else is very sensibly positioned there, as you can have a look but mine is sort of floating around. So it's the island.
Yeah.
It's a murder mystery and a sort of whodunit really. And it's set here on the Isle of Wight in a seaside village. It's actually all based in a real place here called Brook, which is the most beautiful beach, and I go down there a lot. And then opposite, there's a big old house, and that's where I imagine the family in the story living. So Juliet is the main character. She comes back from China, where she's been for a couple of years, and her father is dying. And he says his dying words are that he's told her brother-in-law, Rhys, a dark family secret. He dies, but before Juliet can find out the dark family secret from Rhys, Rhys is murdered. So Juliet now, because of things that happen, knows that somebody within her very close family or friends has murdered Rhys. So she's in this horrendous position of suspecting her sisters, her mother, and people she's been really close to, people she saw, she really knew. And of course, they're not very happy with the fact that she starts suspecting them and asking questions and things of them. So it becomes very, very tense. And through all that, various secrets, one secret tends to lead to another, leads to another. And gradually, the story really is about, it is partly about family and family relationships. I was in a family of 4, and this is 4 siblings, 4 adult sisters actually, and their ups and their downs, and they're quite strange relationships really. But it's also ultimately it's about finding out who murdered who done it. And I hope you can't guess till the end.
I think it sounds fabulous, and I love the title and the book cover. It's just brilliant.
Gosh, aren't we lucky? I mean, I can boast about the cover because that Boldwood have just do wonderful, wonderful covers. And when I saw that, what I really love is this little, I don't know if you can see it, there's a little window and somebody peeking out, and I thought that just sums it up because it's all about secrets and people watching people in this little village and this family. It's all very, they're great. Thank you.
Yeah. Linda, No Place Like Home.
Yes, No Place Like Home. There shouldn't be, should there? My story is predominantly about family. It's based around 2 sisters called Molly and Beth. Molly is the older sister by a good number of years, and Beth is a 15-year-old, very reluctant person in the story, because she doesn't want to move house. The story begins when they move house to a house that they've inherited, a house that they've never seen before. And Beth makes it very clear that she doesn't want to be there. So when things start going wrong, Molly thinks Beth is at the center of it, and she thinks she's trying to make things difficult for them and potentially making it so that they might move out again. And basically Molly gives her the ultimatum and says, we are not moving again, we're staying here. And Beth replies with, well, when we get murdered in our beds like our mum did, what are you going to, what's going to happen? Are we going to be all over the news like she was? But in the background, we can hear the villain's voice. We know what the villain's thinking, and we know that he's there. So we know it's not Beth, but we can see.
So is that another point of view then? Like do you have a separate point of view? For that.
It's a first person point of view, so you don't know if it's a man or a woman, you don't know who it is, you don't know where it's coming from. And it's all about people that you can trust or not so trust. So I like to make it so that all the people that are surrounding the family could potentially be the person that's at the heart of the trouble. And in the end, it is down to who can she trust. And I've had many comments where people have said, you know what, we even thought it was the dog. There was so much going on.
Dylan the dog.
We weren't sure. It could potentially have just been anybody. So that was nice.
That's good. Yeah.
So there's a question just popped up, but I'll quickly just talk about mine, and then we can move on to a question from the audience. Sounds a bit flash, doesn't it, the audience? Listeners, watchers, whatever you call them. So I wrote The Bridesmaid. Oh my gosh, just doesn't it feel like such a long time ago now when you're sort of writing them, and I'm writing my 5th one at the moment. But so The Bridesmaid, again, that's about family. So there is 2 friends, Caitlin and Sasha, and when they're young, they meet in this old manor house where Sasha's parents work as like a gardening couple, and the children screaming outside the door. And then the big manor house where they sort of which they look after, and then Caitlin is the granddaughter of the principals of this house. And they become sort of quite close, but there's something not quite right about Caitlin. She'd be quite sort of malicious, but Sasha's just desperate to be friends with her, and they become these best friends, which they kind of continue that into their adulthood. And then sort of flashes between the past and the present. And during the present, Caitlin is getting married and Sasha is her bridesmaid. But during the time when they were children, Sasha discovers a secret about Caitlin's family in this big old house, Saxby House. And so she's been carrying that secret for all these years, and it's whether she should bring that secret out at her best friend's wedding, like you do.
Yeah, like you do.
And, or whether she should continue to hold on to that. So yeah, that's what The Bridesmaid is about.
So how did you find going back and forth in time? Was that?
I love doing that, and I like writing that because it's always interesting to hear people's perspective of which ones they preferred. And it's quite often they like the one that I preferred. I preferred writing in the past, definitely. I think there's so much more to discover in people's pasts. It always brings to the forefront, the reasons for people's actions. So that's quite important for me to go back and explore those ideas. Somebody has asked, is it easier to write about somewhere you've been to before or to make up one that is completely fictional? Oh, okay. So, Mary, you might be able to answer that one because you write about where you live.
Yeah. Well, when I first started writing, it's funny, I couldn't write about living here on the island. I went back to my Welsh roots and my first 2 novels are set in Wales. And then I was out walking on the Downs one day and I thought, why aren't I setting books here? This is an amazing place. So it is great. I love living where I'm writing, because if nothing else, you can just you're totally soaked in it. I mean, literally with Brook Beach, because I comes in a lot. But it's just amazing. I can walk up that whole book of the island. I can walk every step of that. And it is quite funny because it's a very picturesque village, and I was walking up through it and saying hello to people who were cutting their hedges and things. And I thought, you really don't know that I'm looking for somewhere to put the body.
Yeah. She looks such a nice lady walking along the beach.
Yeah, that's a murder. So yeah, it's great. I like to just go out there and check things, and yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I mean, my 4th novel, The Bridesmaid, that was set in Dorset, which is where I live.
Yeah.
So yeah, and also I've worked on a private estate as well, so I had that all in my mind. Obviously the characters are completely different to the people I worked with.
Yeah.
But I had that vision of a big house. I understood the dynamics of working for a family. So yeah, I kind of just put that all in there. So how about you, Linda?
Everywhere is about somewhere I've been. It always starts with a place or a house or a district. My first 2 books were about a hotel in Scarborough, which was the backdrop to it, called Rayhead Hall. This book, No Place Like Home, this is based at Hunmanby Gap, and I don't know if you've ever been to that area. It's quite up the northeast of England, but there's just 2 or 3 little houses perched on the edge of the cliff, and I used to go to one of the houses as a teenager and stay there.
Oh, right.
I've always thought what an amazing house it was when you could just literally sit in the living room and see the whole beach and the whole bay of Filey just spreading out in front of you. But I also realised how remote it was, and when it got dark, how very dark it got, because there are no street lights. and at night when the stars are out, it's literally just you and the stars, and all you can see is the silver topping of the waves, and it's just stunning. So it was a perfect place to write a book, and the perfect place for things to go wrong, because
Yeah.
it's so remote. I just knew that if anyone was in that area and they screamed, nobody would hear them. So
Yeah. Ooh, no one hears you scream.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah, I like
definitely.
that.
all of my
Yeah.
books are based.
We've got another question. Do you know your ending before you start writing? I can answer that one. I always do. I always start with the ending. I don't know if that's normal or not. Some people might just start writing randomly and sort of think, oh, I'll get to the ending at the end, or maybe halfway through they might know what's going to happen. But for me, I always know exactly what I'm going to, how the book will end, and that's really how I begin at the end. How about you?
Yeah, I always know the ending. I always know where I've got to go to, and I always know the character that's going to be the villain. So it's then just a case of blending the story and making.
Do you think when you're writing psychological thrillers that's a must, really? Is it possible? I don't know, because I've never, or thrillers or whodunits or whatever, to just sort of start free writing and then see where it takes you.
I think it
You
is.
ever done that?
It's really important to know where you're going to end up, because otherwise, how can you?
You can't plot anything in between, can you?
No. There's a lot of plotting to do, and a lot of blending into the words of what happens with the people. And as you say, with unreliable narrators, you've got to have the clues there, but not make them that obvious that they stand out, but so that the reader gets to the end of the book and goes, do you know what? That's what that meant.
Yeah.
That's what he meant by saying that. Or, when they've come out.
And this is where Mary's going to prove us wrong now. She's going to say, no, I have no idea how the ending is.
No, I certainly can't just sit down and write off a novel. I do both. I spend ages plotting and getting to know my characters, and I start writing, and then I start to change my mind a bit. So then I start plotting again, and it just takes me quite a long time, really. I start off normally with an idea of who done it. I have to know the basic idea of what, the murder, how it's going to happen, and things like that. But because you have to set up a number of credible suspects, so as you go through, I find then I suddenly, one person or one situation comes more and more, and I know who I'm going to choose. So it's a sort of slightly more evolutionary process, but it's not as haphazard as it sounds, because I do masses of notes and plotting, and then if I've changed something, then I have to go back and change something else. But I try not to do too much of that. But I do lots of back and forth and lots of writing and lots of notes, because well, you know what it's like. If you change one tiny little thing, it's like ripples on a pond. You only have to change the colour of somebody's hair, and you've got to go right through the book and make sure they're suddenly not blonde or something. So I think it's I find it's a bit of both, really. I wouldn't say I have that firm an idea, but I basically know murder. I know the basic clues. I know my main points of what but it does change quite a lot as I'm going through as well.
And I imagine you must have used police I can never say this, police procedural. I guess a bit of a tongue twister, but you must have to plot in different police procedural elements into your books. Do you enjoy doing that?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I think because I've got an amateur sleuth, I'm not heavy on police procedural. I like to get things right, and I have written to the local police station and said what level of policeman would arrive at this sort of thing. But it's really, the police are sort of on the edge usually. Usually they well, so far I haven't done what is an obvious murder. It could be an accident or suicide, and then the person who Juliet, she's convinced that her brother-in-law Reese was murdered, whereas it appeared to the police to be just a hit and run with somebody who'd gone off, but she thinks it's premeditated. So in a sense, they have a lighter touch on it than the person who I've got investigated. But they sort of come and go in it, but it's
Mm.
not like Line of Duty or something. It's not a heavy police
Yeah.
procedural. But I do try to get things right, and I talk to people and try to get, you know,
Yeah.
when it's murder, you know, the right symptoms and stuff like that. Get that sort of
I imagine
thing
it could be quite frustrating for anybody who works in the police to be reading or watching anything on television that's got things wrong, and they must be shouting and screaming at the TV or at the book. Do you have anybody that you call on, Linda, for any police procedure? I still can't say
I
it.
do. I've got two or three
Procedural.
two or three very good friends who are former drug squad police. I've got a friend who lives down in Cornwall who's a chief inspector, and also we've got a couple of our fellow authors whose husbands are policemen. So,
oh wow,
they're always handy to give a call to when you need them. But I must say, I mean, my books don't really involve too much police procedural. It's more about the family and the family connections, and things tend to normally go very wrong before we get to the police.
Yeah, it terrifies me. I've only ever written in a tiny amount. Like you say, Mary's just on the very outskirts, so I don't have to go into too much kind of detail. It terrifies me that I get something wrong, so I'm sort of steering away from that at the moment. Somebody's asked, have you ever killed someone off in your novels who has done you wrong in real life?
Ooh, good
Jessica
question.
Redland. Have you, Jessica?
Have you, Nina?
Nice thought, isn't it? It's no, I haven't. Not killed them off as such. No, not yet. But there's still time, isn't there? Got a few more books in me yet, so yeah.
No, I've never done it. I mean, the characters, they may be snippets of people I know, but nobody's really anybody I know anyway. So no, I haven't killed anybody like that.
That's quite a dark question.
Yeah.
Like such uplifting fiction. What's your favourite thing about writing psychological thrillers? Because it can have its dark moments and it's kind of times when you just think, oh, you know, I've got to go into a sort of dark, deep place, and there must be elements that you enjoy about it.
Yeah, I just think life's not that nice always. So sometimes I wouldn't say it's reality. I mean, what happens in my books don't happen to everybody every day of the week, obviously. But I just think that people can get into situations quite easily that they shouldn't. So I think sometimes the characters can drop themselves into different situations and find themselves in a whole heap of mess before they realise, and it's the accumulation of things that happen to them that ends up being the issue in the end, and what causes their problems. And it's the people they mix with. So it all depends on who their friends are, really, and who their friends shouldn't be.
Yeah, the way life takes them. Do you mean?
Yeah, exactly. So but I like writing them because I just think they're really gritty, and I think they've got a lot of twists to them, and I do think that, you know, you really get into the mindset of your heroine and how she thinks and what she wants from life, and it's always nice to put her through the mill and then to give her an happy ending. So because most of my books do have, you know, quite nice endings, so even though they go through the mill in the middle, you know, they get a nice outcome.
Yeah, I think I already answered that question earlier when I said that I like delving into the past and digging around and trying to kind of reveal why people are acting the way they are in the present day. So yeah, just how our childhoods and our past affect our present is always something that's always really fascinated me. So I really enjoy putting those elements into a book.
Mm.
So that
Right,
where your
Mary.
psychology degree comes in, do you think?
Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
Yeah, I just fascinated by people and relationships and the effect that it has on other people, and specifically things that have happened in our childhood, because obviously,
Mm.
you know, those are the things that sort of affect us most in present times. So yeah, it's fascinating for me.
Yeah.
How about you, Mary? What's the best thing about writing psychological thrillers?
I do. The thing I really like is the thing I find the hardest, which is the plotting. I think I love getting all the layers and going back and forth and all over the place. But I like lots and lots of layers and things. So I do get a bit tangled up sometimes, but I like doing that because I suppose what it comes down to is I think people are really much more complicated, everyone is, than they appear. And so as the story goes by, you learn more and more and more about people. And it's not always negative. You don't have to discover everybody's a psycho type stuff. You know, sometimes you find out people are acting strangely because of actually something really sad that's happened to them or something. And I like to because to sort of look beyond the surface of people, and maybe it's all about empathy and trying to understand, a bit like what you were saying, Nina, about why people do things and why they're acting the way
And
they
it's
are.
a
And I
thrill
think,
for us, isn't it, to unravel it all,
yeah,
isn't it, in our brains as we're writing. We're kind of working it all out as well, and working out the characters and why they've done these things and their motives. So that's quite thrilling, isn't it? Kind of getting to the end and like, oh yes, which kind of
yeah,
ties in with a question that somebody just popped up here that says, how do you decide which subplot, if any, to use? And I don't think personally for me that's a decision. It kind of, throughout the process of writing, the subplots kind of just get woven in as a result of having to kind of work out the bigger picture. What do you think?
I think absolutely. It's the family connections. Everybody's got their own story going on. Everybody's got their own life. So weaving the subplots in is just the background to the people that are surrounding the heroine. For me.
And sometimes they can be just as integral, can't they, to the plot as the actual main plot.
In one of my books, the sister was in a wheelchair and she couldn't walk, but secretly, and in her point of view, you know that she can walk, but she pretends she can't because she gets the sympathy from the people because of it. So it's working out why people are doing things and the subplots behind it. And it's like in No Place Like Home, Beth's ultimate goal is she wants to see her father, but her father's a criminal and he's been in prison for the last 15 years. And Molly knows that he's not safe, but she can't tell her sister why he's not safe. So the subplot's all going on in the background that you know he's not safe, you know why he's not safe, but she's trying to keep Beth from finding out to protect her. So again, it's another subplot, and it's just working with people's emotions and feelings.
So do you have subplots worked out beforehand, Mary, or do they just appear as you're writing?
Sometimes I find it quite interesting if you've got sort of like in the house party, I had a theme of people keeping secrets, and then the actual main lady character was also keeping a secret, which was sort of like a subplot through it. I think with the island, it's Juliet's story is almost her personal story. It's like the subplot to her doing the investigation into who killed Reese, because she's come home and she's always been the mother hen of the family, and suddenly she doesn't seem to know anybody anymore very well, and they don't seem to need her. And it's so there's this whole subplot of her and her relationships and her relationship with somebody in the village and things that's been rethought as well. And that's sort of kind of, I suppose that is a subplot really, because it's very important. Her story is she's got a character arc as well in the middle of it all.
Yeah, I really enjoy the subplot elements, but it's essential, isn't it, not to kind of get too carried away with those and kind of stay focused on the main plot, but just kind of weave those bits in and out to kind of vary it up. Otherwise, you know, it wouldn't make it would just kind of, you know, would halve the book really, wouldn't it, if we didn't have the subplots. There's another question. Do you need a title before you start writing, or can you start without one? I like
Well,
having a title, but quite often they've changed it.
Yeah.
I've only kept one of my titles so far, The Bridesmaid. So I'm doing well. By book 4, I'm like, I've nailed it. I know how to write. I know how to get the right title.
Well, you chose The Bridesmaid as your title.
That was my title, yes.
It's a brilliant title. It's a good title. I like all the others as well. It's a good
Yeah.
title,
Yeah, the others are great as well. We got there in the end, but it was a lot of toing and froing. But I always have a working title that I start with anyway. Quite often, you know, as I
Yeah.
said, they'll change it, but you know,
I'm
in my
always-
mind, it's the best title. but by the time they've come up with all these other examples, I'm like, no, actually, yeah, it works.
Yeah.
Mm.
I was, my working title for the island was The Four Sisters, because that's what it's at its heart about. But I think the island is probably a better title.
Yeah,
I'll give
it's a
them that.
brilliant
It
title.
is a better title. I think it's sort of, because that's sort of encompasses the whole story, and it did grow beyond those four sisters as I was writing it. So
yeah. And with an island, isn't it? It's kind of remote. You're kind of cut off, so it encompasses all those sort of
yeah, exactly,
elements, doesn't it?
And I think the fact that it's set on an island and on the Isle of Wight is really important to the story. So, yeah. What about you, Linda?
Well, No Place Like Home starts off as The Fatal Inheritance, because that's where it starts, is where they inherit the the house. But my lovely editor, she said, "Oh, I'm not sure about the title. Shall we change it?" Which always means we're going to change it.
You're changing it, yeah.
But she came up with No Place Like Home, and so this was Emily's idea, and I love it. I think it's a great title.
I tell you what, it's incredibly easy to remember. The first time I saw the title of your book, when I never had to think, oh, what was the name of the book? I just know it. You know it in your head. It's a very clever title.
She's brilliant.
Yeah,
that's good.
Somebody's asked what other working titles have we had. So with my books, they've been through quite a few before we actually got to the final one. I'm just trying to think now. So The Guilty Wife was actually used to be called The Darkest Fear. We actually changed that after publication, just to slot in with a sort of a brand, which became all these, you know, The Bridesmaid, The Daughter-in-Law. So they were all about the person. And then The Guilty Wife and The Housemate. I'm trying to think what. I think the book I was writing. Is it? No. So The Housemate. My working title was Influenced. Because that was all about social media influencers. So that was the working title I had for that. But I knew that wouldn't stick. I knew they wouldn't go for that one. But yeah, like you say, just have something to go with. The Daughter-in-Law, that went through quite a few. It actually began as a book called The Thief Who Stole Her Son, because it's about a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law, and the mother-in-law thinks the daughter-in-law has stolen the son away from her. And then it was her husband's mother, and then it became the daughter-in-law. So yeah, it went through quite a few before it got to the daughter-in-law. But yeah,
I think the daughter-in-law is a really good title as well, mind you.
Yeah,
it's excellent. I think those titles like The Bridesmaid and The Daughter-in-Law are things that anybody can identify with. You know, everybody is interested in weddings and the trauma of weddings, and I think that's why The Bridesmaid is a brilliant title, because I thought, oh, bridesmaid, and you know, you immediately can identify with it, can't you, and tune into it.
Yeah, and everybody knows that things can go wrong at weddings as well. So it's like, you know, it's all going to kick off at the wedding, so what's going to happen? So yeah, I think that's why people are quite drawn to it. Let's have a look at some more questions here. Was it a conscious decision to write in this genre? I know, Linda, you started off in more sort of family. Was it more sort of family sagas or romance thrillers? Is that a genre?
More domestic noir type books. So and they just developed, and as the more books that I wrote, the nastier I got.
It's quite easy, isn't it, once you get into the flow of it?
Into a horrible person. But I just wanted to mix it up a bit and to make things, as we said earlier, make the narrator a little bit more unreliable, so people weren't sure where they were looking for the clues. And so yeah, they just got nastier and nastier. So now they're classed as thrillers, not romantic suspense anymore.
Yeah.
Although there's always a little bit of a romance in there, it's not a main plot point. It's more of a subplot now.
So
although
Mary,
the
did you?
book is going to have no romance, so
Yeah. And did you fall into it by accident, Mary, or did you set out to be a psychological thriller author?
Well, no, I wrote women's fiction. I was always like the idea of sort of a woman in crisis, really, and sorting things through. But in my heart, I'd always wanted to write a murder mystery whodunit type book, because I grew up just living Agatha Christie. Really, I have all her books and I've read them so many times, and I just love that whole whodunit structure thing, really. And I just never had the nerve. I thought, oh, I can't do that. Oh, I can't do that. And then my brother said to me, "Oh, go on, Mary, give it a whirl." So I did, and that's how I wrote The House Party, which I submitted to Boldwood, thinking that, and they took it, and so they asked me then to write some more whodunit. So it's very exciting, because it's I've sort of lived and breathed whodunit so for years and years, and now I'm writing them.
You're saying psychological thrillers for you. Sorry, I do apologise, because there's so many different subgenres of the thriller market, isn't there? There's the whodunits, there's the domestic noir, like we were just talking about, Linda, and there's the real kind of scary thrillers, kind of Stephen King type thing. So yeah, it's quite broad, isn't it? The spectrum.
It's difficult, because I think I don't write a cozy sort of mystery, but then I don't think Agatha Christie is cozy. I think it's darker than that, and I think there are darker themes going in it. But it is quite a sort of, if somebody liked Agatha Christie, they probably, well, they would like the sort of story this is, I think.
And can you think of any books that you've read? Now let's try and choose something that most people would have read, like an Agatha Christie, or even a film like The Sixth Sense, or something where we're not going to give any spoilers away. So if anybody's not seen it, then look away now. Or say the name of the film or the book. What's the best reveal for you in a film or a book, would you say, where you've sort of thought, I wish I could have? You don't have to reveal it, but just maybe just say the book or the.
I think Shutter Island.
Yeah.
Fabulous twist. I think that was probably one of the best twists I've seen.
Yeah.
I literally didn't see it coming.
No.
And I'm not sure, as you say, if people have watched the film, I'll not give away the ending, but it's well worth watching it.
It is, yeah. And I was thinking about that recently. Shutter Island. It's Leonardo DiCaprio.
Who wouldn't want to watch Leonardo DiCaprio? I mean,
yeah.
I might give that a whirl. Research.
yeah, definitely. I was thinking it's one of those films I need to revisit. So, because I remember it definitely being a killer twist. Yeah.
Together.
I was thinking about Behind Her Eyes, which is the book, and then they made it into a Netflix series. Was it a series, or did they do a film? I think it was a series. Behind Her Eyes. Yeah, that's something I've watched recently that I just thought, the twist in the end of that book is just, for me, I know it didn't suit everybody because it kind of went off on a tangent of a different genre, but definitely for me, that was one of the best that I've seen. And also I think the book is obviously quite similar.
So can I ask you a question from, with you having a psychology degree, when you're watching these films, do you pick up on things a lot more, or?
No, not really. I just tend to sort of get a bit, I wish I thought of that first. No, I think I'm only sort of in that zone when I'm writing. Yeah, I don't really I kind of switch off, and it's just pure entertainment for me, whether I'm reading or writing. I mean, occasionally I'll pick up on things when I'm reading. I'm like, they've gone into a little bit of research there, or they know their stuff. They might have studied some psychology, and because they're kind of trying to bring out an element of somebody's past or something. So I kind of recognize things sometimes, but yeah, no, it's just pure entertainment generally. There's a question here. What are your writing days like?
Do we get writing day?
Yeah.
Mine are fairly chaotic. I really should be a lot more disciplined than I am. I mean, I don't go to work, so I should really be churning them out, shouldn't I? But I don't. Life just sort of seems to happen around me. But I do write every day, and I've just actually, in the last few weeks, given myself a desk. So I'm no longer sitting on the sofa, which is a big move for me, and I'm missing my sofa a bit, to be honest. But I actually have a desk and 2 screens now, and I feel like a real proper working.
Oh, wow.
But
That is posh, isn't it? With 2 screens.
well, it sounds
very
posh.
fancy. My husband uses like 2 or 3 screens, and I can never my brain can't compute. I'm like, what? How are you managing to do that?
Gosh! I mean, this morning I sit down. I go, Thomas, that's my son. I have to shout because he's normally got his headset on. I say, Thomas, I can't get the second screen to work or something like that. I don't know what I'm going to do when he goes back and he's not working remotely anymore.
No, it must be a game changer though, because you can kind of bring, you can have your book down,
yeah.
things up. So
well, what I can have is I can have my outlines and my chapter outlines and all my character things over here, and then I can have my actual writing here. And it for somebody whose little brain is quite muddled, really, it's a big help.
And do you write on any sort of software, or do you just use Word?
No, I just use Word. I've tried odd little things, like I did look at Scrivener and things, but anybody else use those sorts of things?
I looked at Scrivener, but I didn't get on well. Yeah, it needs like a day or so, doesn't it, to teach yourself how to use it. I just thought, I haven't got time.
What about you, Linda? Have you ever used any of those?
No, I just use Word. I mean, for years I searched for software before I started writing properly, and I was sure that there had to be something out there that people used, and I watched a BBC One documentary with Ian Rankin, and he literally, in the documentary, he literally took himself into an office on the 3rd of January of every year, sat down at the computer with his box file and opened Word and started writing and printed it off. And I was like, there's no magic formula. And I literally started writing that day, and I've never stopped. For years, I was looking for software because I was sure that I was missing out on something. And I was sure that there had to be something that people use. But after watching that documentary, I was just like, that's it. You've just got to write. And
that's the answer, isn't it?
Yeah.
I suppose now you're both professional authors. You must get other budding writers coming to you and saying, how do I do it? What should I do? I've got this idea for a book. But I think the answer to the question that you just said, Linda, is you must just write. There is no magic formula, isn't it? It's just sit down, get the bare bones down, and you just sort of sift through it in various drafts to get it to perfection.
You just kind of learn very early on that nobody else is going to put those words on the page for you.
That's right.
And you've just got to do it. And no matter how much it hurts some days to do it, because some days you really don't want to, some days you've got other things, a million things going on. I mean, I work full time. I'm a sales director, and so I've got quite a high profile job. And I work a lot of hours, and so by the time I get home and I've had tea and I've spoke to my husband, and then I start writing, it can be 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and it's tough, but but you've just got to do it. You've just got to sit down and put the words on the paper.
Well, some of the best sellers, haven't they? They've been written on trains and in people's lunch breaks and that sort of thing. So it is just a case of, like you say, just nobody's going to do it for you. You've just got to write it. I think a lot of people have this idea that they've got this idea of the book, and then they're too scared to commit to it. How should I begin? You've just got to start writing. That's the answer, isn't it?
The amount of people that have said to me, can we go for a coffee? I just want to, talk about how to write and what to do. And I've gone through it, and I've said to them, you just need to put the words on the page. And I've bumped into them months and months later and said, how's it going? And they're like, oh, we've not really had time.
Yeah, you just got to make that time, haven't you? Sort of put other social activities on hold just to do the writing, haven't you? Sometimes that's why it ends up can be quite a lonely job.
But I love it. I mean,
Yeah.
we're living the best life, aren't we?
Yeah.
I find sometimes that if I haven't written for a day or two, I do find it hard work, but I miss it, and I miss my world. I miss my escape I miss my characters, and I just want to go back into my world of my book, really. And I think whatever happened, I will always write stories. Because I love in stories, really.
If I don't write for a couple of days, I start falling to sleep, and my book starts coming to me like, like one of those old-fashioned films, like flashing at me.
Yeah. Don't forget about me.
Like just thinking, like a cinematic, prompt. It's like, oh, this is what's going to happen next, and this is the character, and this is where she's going to go, and this is what she's going to do. So the next morning, I end up getting up like at stupid o'clock and thinking, right, I've just got to write this down before I forget.
And I'm just looking there in the background, Linda. You've got quite a well-stocked bookshelf there. So, are you do you read a lot, and can you read whilst you're writing? I don't mean doing the two at the same time, but can you be concentrating on a book and then sort of go off and write your own words, or do you have to keep those two separate?
Well, that's only a little bit of the bookshelf. They go all the way around.
I know. I imagine. Yeah.
But this is what I work for an office supplies and office furniture company, so this is what we do. We refit offices. So when I got the opportunity of my own office at home, I insisted on bookshelves.
Yeah.
But no, I tend to read a different genre to what I'm writing.
Right.
And the only time that I read thrillers or psychological suspense is when I'm not writing, when I'm between books or when I'm doing edits, because I don't want to cloud the book that I'm writing with what I'm reading. But I love to read women's fiction and just something nice that's going to get me thinking, but that's not necessarily my genre.
How about you, Mary? Are you a voracious
reader? I love to read. I think it's sort of,
I think you have to read, don't you, to write? You have to be a reader, don't you, to write? You can't.
Actually, one of the great things about since I've come to Boldwood is that I've been reading books by various authors, and it's really good because it gets you reading different genres and things like that. And because I do read a lot of psychological thrillers and things, because I love them, and I love all who've done it. And if I'm really tired, I just reread an Agatha Christie, because I can actually forget who's done it. So I can do that sort of thing depending on how tired I am. But I also love. I mean, the last book I read, the last one before last, I read Joe Bartlett's The Cornish Midwife, and it was just gorgeous. And it was like sort of it's just lovely to go into a different sort of world, and I always wanted to be a midwife anyway, so I was able to live this other little world that I'd always wanted to be in a little bit through the book. So I love women's fiction, and I love all sorts of books actually. So what about you, Nina?
Yeah, I love everything. I'll read absolutely anything from kind of the Booker Prize winners to Marianne Keyes to absolutely anything. So but I do enjoy reading thrillers obviously as well. I think that's something that I'll always be drawn to read. But I was just wondering if there was a particular book that you read maybe in your childhood or in your early adulthood that sort of inspired you or sparked that, ignited that passion inside you to want to be a writer. Was there any particular author that did that for you?
I just devoured books as a child. My favourite place was the library. And I remember Mum taking me to the library with my 6 pink little library cards. That's when they were little cardboard. You're probably too young to remember that.
I can't. It rings a bell. Actually. I think we did have we definitely had a library card.
It was like a little pink card and they put bookmark
into the card.
But we got 6 So we could choose 6 books. And I remember I used to walk to the desk with arms full like this, and my mum used to just look and say, "You can only take 6." And I'd be like, "But which 6? You know, I can't choose." And I used to end up sat on the floor in the library, just devastated that I couldn't take them all. So the library was a regular place for us to visit. But I just devoured books.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Was there any author that inspired you, Mary?
Probably Agatha Christie. I keep going on about her.
Yeah.
But those were the sort of first books I read sort of independently as a sort of young teenager. But I did have the most amazing English teacher for A-level English, and she like opened my eyes. And she, you know, how you get somebody who's got this real gift. Whatever she taught me, I loved. I loved Jane Austen because of her, Orwell because of her, Shakespeare because of her. She took us to Shakespeare plays. And she did say to this is quite funny. She said to my mum at the parents' evening, she said, "I really see Mary's eyes have opened. She's not just reading Agatha Christie's now, is she?" She'd be so proud. But it was, I think she took me out into sort of maybe more the classics. And from her, I just suddenly found this world of just read loads of them. And I didn't really get into writing till I was much older. What about you two? When did you get into writing?
Oh, something I've always done, always loved doing from a child, really, just writing creative. I always repeat this story, you might have heard it before, but I just always used to love writing character, like developing the characters. So I'd scribble down all the characters, you know, or everything about the characters, their name, their age, you know, what they love doing. And then I'd sort of go off to bed, and then I'd wake up and I'd be so excited the next day to start the story, because I'd planned out all these different characters that I was going to put into the story. Never actually finished any books as a child, and then just always carried on writing into my sort of early 20s, and then just kind of eventually managed to finish a book, which was The Daughter-in-Law. But that was many years before it actually got published. It went through many different phases and edits. It actually started off as a family saga and developed into a psychological thriller. So I sort of fell into the psychological thriller market by accident, really.
It's just the way the book sort of took you.
Well, I actually wrote it as a family saga, and it was an editor before, or an agent before the agent that I got at the time, who sort of suggested to put it into the unreliable narrator genre, because of the fact that Gone Girl had just come out. So that was 2012. That had come out, and that was sort of hitting the bookshelves, and that was doing really well. So it kind of sparked from that, really. But yes, we went off on a tangent. I forgot what we were talking about. What were we talking about? But it's interesting, actually, about how I was thinking about it recently, because I've seen a lot of authors who start off writing in women's fiction. I'll use Lisa Jewell as an example, because I've read so much Lisa Jewell, and I love all of her. I even though I love psychological thrillers and I read a lot of thrillers and write thrillers, I actually prefer her older work, when she wrote when it was just sort of women's fiction. And I've seen that a lot with Dorothy Koomson. I'm just trying to think of any other authors that you can think of that started off in that genre and have sort of moved over to the psychological thriller market. They've gone to the dark side like us, haven't they? More and more, I think.
Amanda James did quite a few women's fiction, and she did one or two time travel books, and then she did suspense. So they're really good.
So what do you think that pull is towards the psychological thriller market? Because it's becoming so popular now, isn't it? But it doesn't seem to fade. People are still interested in it, and they still want to read these books. What do you think is keeping people just coming back? The ideas. Sometimes I worry that we're going to run out of ideas, don't you? Because they're just you can kind of regurgitate them and rejig them, can't you?
Yeah, but I think what you said earlier about it being a huge, it's a very big umbrella term, psychological drama.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it is vast. And I think between the three of us, we're probably writing you know, quite different stories in different ways. So I think there's things in common, but it's a big umbrella. So no, I don't think it, and I think just people like to see something, sort like to see a darkness, but then it resolved, and
I think
Yeah.
the other
maybe
thing
that's
is
the
you've
thriller
always
tale.
got another book in your mind while you're writing this one, and
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I very quickly moved on to the next one when after finishing this. So, you know, I
Yeah.
think you've always got another idea, and you
Yeah.
can't wait to start. You know,
Yeah.
you can't wait to get on with that one.
So there's no fear, Linda, of you running out of ideas then? Do you worry that the market might become saturated and there'll be no more plots to uncover?
I think there's a lot of ideas to
Yeah.
go at. I think, as I say, you know, there's so many.
I think what worries me is technology evolving. My first book, The Daughter-in-Law, even though it came out 2019, I actually set it back in sort of 2008 because social media wasn't so prevalent then, and I just needed that not to be in the plot because it would have revealed too much. The characters would have been able to discover too many things about one another. So that's the thing that I worry about, is technology evolving so much that everybody will just know everything. And then we'll have to start, you know, kind of learning more about technology in order to write our plots.
but then that in itself brings a whole new world, I think, and you know, Facebook and things like that. People present. I mean, in some ways, it's so rich a field to go into because people present one thing, and they can be very, very different, and they can do all sorts of things online. So I think it's because I was thinking around anonymous letters, and I thought, is that just old fashioned now? Is it just all done on online sort of bullying? But actually, there's different strengths. There's different, you know, that they're doing the same thing. It's the same sort of bullying and the same sort of, well, you know, well, bullying really that goes on. We're just doing it in different ways.
Just done in a different way.
Yeah, I think so.
So what comes next? What are we?
Oh yes. So what have we got coming up next in books? We can just finish off with what you've got coming up next. So my next book I'm writing at the moment, I can't say too much about it. I don't want to. Can I reveal the title? I don't know. What can I say? It's about friends, which I think is always a really interesting genre to explore. So it's about two friends, and that's about a third friend that comes into that sort of scenario and upsets that relationship. That is already quite secure, and then obviously lots of secrets, lots of past, lots of sort of going back into the past to uncover secrets about which one of these friends is actually the one that we need to be worrying about. So that's all I can say really, without revealing too much. Can you sum your next work up in a couple of sentences?
Mine is the daughter of a serial killer. She found out her father was a serial killer at the age of 6, and now 20 years later, there is someone out for revenge, and she finds out when her birth mother is killed, and basically the person who's out for revenge is going after all the people that her father loved. So who the killer, and he was the serial killer. So he's in prison, and someone is now picking off all the people that surrounded him as a family. So she knows that she's possibly next. So she runs back to her childhood home, which is Holy Island in London, and she takes refuge there. But the problem with Holy Island is once the tide comes in, the island is cut off from the mainland, and there's no escape. It's just a causeway that joins the island to the mainland, but only while it's low tide.
Oh, that sounds brilliant.
Mary,
exciting. Can you sum your next piece of work up in a couple of sentences? We just got
very quick. It's going to be set over in Yarmouth, and it's a little close of houses and small businesses within a harbour town, and it'll be another murder mystery.
Brilliant. So I think the thing that we can sort of safely say is that we're not running out of ideas. We've still got plenty of books left in us, and there's lots more thrillers, whodunits, and and domestic noir to come from Bolton between us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so.
There we go. Thanks for joining,
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah, thank you everybody for coming. Thank you. Hi. Okay then.